judge has just ruled that the Trump administration's effort to deport Mahmoud Khalil can move forward. Correspondent Brooke Taylor, live right near that courthouse in Jena, Louisiana. Tell us what the judge is saying in there, Brooke.
Hi, Martha. Yeah, this has been long anticipated and some major news. Just to first give you some perspective, we're down the street from the ICE detention center. The courtroom is inside of there. They didn't allow any phones or cameras. So we're finding out this information from our reporter who's over there down the street. She tells us, as you just mentioned, the immigration.
It is the Martha Zoller Show. And look, yeah, things are going second 100 days, man. It is going very well for the Trump administration. We got some text messages. Welcome back to the Martha Zoller Show. You can join us on the phones at 770-535-2911. We've got some text messages that I wanted to get to, and one is actually from yesterday, so I want to get to that one. It says, Judy said, also never take a drink that a guy brings you unless you know him very well. Get it directly from the bartender. My mom gave me this advice when I came of age. You know, I was talking about that kind of problem that people have yesterday, and thank you for that advice, Judy. And then Tom said, even Kentucky Senator Rand Paul said accepting the plane from Qatar is a violation of the emoluments clause in the Constitution. I'm sure his crypto stablecoin scheme will suffer a similar fate. Why isn't the Republican Party investigating these issues? The American people deserve better. Well, Tom, on the plane, because it hasn't happened yet, it can't be investigated. It's just being talked about. And that's the thing you got to learn about Donald Trump is that don't go on what's just talked about. Go on what actually happens, okay? And we're going to hear from Kevin O'Leary about that in just a moment, about the signal versus the noise, because the noise is he's taken this airplane, but he hasn't taken the airplane yet, and there's plenty of things he says he's going to do that he doesn't do. And then another one texted me and said, because I said I was doing a series on gambling. They said, hey, I'm driving to North Carolina to make my PGA championship bets this morning. I thought that was pretty funny. And look, it's a big week in the PGA championship, Logan, because, okay, so a couple of weeks ago, month ago, we had Rory McIlroy finish up his career Grand Slam, and he had waited, 11 years or something like that to get it. Right,
some long amount of time.
Well, Jordan Spieth is in that same boat, although he's only, I think, 7 or 9 years down the road. I think it's maybe 7. I could be wrong, but it's a long time. He's had a long drought where he was like winning majors, and then he got married, started having kids, and I'm not blaming them, but his life changed, and He didn't win as many. Maybe he wasn't spending as much time practicing. I don't know. But he did a Netflix show. I don't know. Maybe that's what the curse is. But everybody's going to be watching Spieth because the last 3 tournaments, his final rounds was on fire. Like if he had played that way the whole time, he would have won the last 3 rounds. And so everybody's going to be watching him. But I don't think it's his year to get that career Grand Slam. But Lord knows these sports commentators, and Logan, I hope you don't do this, with all the little knick-knack trivia points about who did what. I just want to watch the golf.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to know who won in 1948 on hole 16, what they shot? You don't want to know anything about that, or what their dog's name is?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right, just wanted to check.
I just want to know who is coming. You know, I like talking about, Jordan Spieth's shooting, but there's 3 people behind him that have had 3 birdies in a row. That's relevant to me.
Right.
Because it's in that thing. But what Sam Snead, God rest his soul. I love Sam Snead. But what Sam Snead did in the 1953 PGA Tour Championship, I don't care.
It's not relevant to what's going on right now.
I know. And there's some poor researcher. I mean, Jim Nance doesn't have all this stuff in his head. Okay, there's some poor researcher that is coming up with every little thing they can find about sports, and I'm sure y'all do that to some degree for the high school stuff that you do, because it helps sometimes if there's a lull to have a little knick-knack to put in there. But if there's not a lull and they're hitting balls, I want to watch them hit the ball. That's all.
As simple as that. And like you said, the research team for all the sports commentary, kind of the unsung heroes, right? Because like you said, if there's a lull, if there's like we saw at the PGA Championship the other day, right, for qualifying and whatnot, there was a lot of rain. So you need to have, other talking points other than just what's currently going on in case something happens.
So, and also through the text messages at 770-535-2911. You can also call us at that number. It's the talk and text line at M&R Rental. We hope that you'll use it. And this to one of the reasons about Qatar, and to my point about we don't know all the details here as to why he's lifting up these folks, because that culture loves to be praised, okay? It's that kind of culture where they feel like they're not really a real royal family, because a lot of people say, oh, yeah, the Brits just put them in charge. They weren't really, they were just a bunch of nomads. So all the royal families in the Middle East kind of have this, imposter syndrome, where they know that it was the Brits drawing the line that gave them these, quote, kingdoms, and they aren't sure if they're on firm footing. But somebody said, and I love this, on Qatar, I hope I'm saying that right, on Qatar they have a 2-mile runway that can lend a fully loaded C-130 on land, a fully loaded C-130 on that nobody else has, and they let us use it. That's why we're their friend. And you know what? Sometimes the enemy of your enemy is your friend. So Qatar and Saudi Arabia are enemies of Iran. The enemy of your enemy is your friend. Now, Kevin O'Leary, who does such an amazing job of getting through the noise, he had something to say about the very wonderful day yesterday, and I think it's important that we hear it.
You bought the market at the dip. You've had a phenomenal year. The point is you can't just look at it by the hour. You got to wait for the outcome. Now, Trump is unusual. And look, what I've learned is don't look at the noise. My goodness, you can't deal with Trump's noise. Look at the signal. What's he trying to do? Reset world order on trade. VAT taxes work in almost every economy on earth, between 7 and 14%, including all the European countries and Canada. And this is a consumption tax that we can't put through here a popular basis at all. It's coming in the form of tariffs, and I think it's going to.
So it's coming in the form of tariffs. Forget the noise. Listen to the signal. And, the texter that texted in about that runway, I think you're right. If you've got something we need to keep us safe, then we're going to put up with some things from you. I mean, heck, we were with Russia on 2 world wars to get back at Germany, okay? We haven't been friendly with them about most anything else. But on 2 world wars, the enemy of our enemy was our friend. Now, sometimes you can get in trouble with that. The enemy of our enemy is our friend, because they really are our enemy. But I don't know that these Arab countries are really our enemies, because they really want what we have. Now, you can't forget the history on this, though. In the 1970s, they largely had what we had. Meaning the women were open and dressing in a Western way. They were getting educated and all of that. And for whatever reason, there were factions of the Muslim faith that didn't like that. And so in Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabis came into power, and they started pushing women back into the dark ages. In Lebanon and Jordan and Iraq and Iran and you name it, African country probably, Arab country, in Qatar, in Dubai, any of that, United Arab Emirates. Dubai is a city in United Arab Emirates. All those countries, for whatever reason, maybe the men were afraid of the women, I don't know, but they got these radical forms of Islam, and they pushed the women back. There's a lot more to it than that, but from my perspective, that was the biggest change that happened when all these radical Islamists came into power, is that the women got pushed back. And then there was all this crazy ways, and they want to come after the West. And as we've established, the West is where everybody wants to go to be free. So they're losing their best people, doesn't matter which country they're coming from, to go to countries in the West to do the things that maybe they could have done in their home countries if they'd had the freedom to do it. But they didn't. But they also look at our culture as being kind of corrupt, which it is to some degree. I mean, we're not perfect either. Freedom leads to the ability to make bad decisions, okay? Freedom leads to, I was listening to someone talk about the difference between freedom and liberty. You know, that liberty is kind of what we have, where you have the freedom to do whatever you want, whatever, regardless of what the outcome is. And that freedoms are things that you get related to whether it's a Constitution or a Bill of Rights or whatever it is. But I think that we have to, as a society, there's 3 steps to this. You know how I love things in 3s. 1, we have to have good leadership, and we have to vote, parent our children, and have face-to-face conversations. But number 1, we got to have good leadership. Number 2, we have to be good leaders. Okay, we just can't sit around and wait for the government to do everything for us. We, as adults, of whatever age adult you are, you could be a young adult like Logan is, or you can be an old adult like I am. Had the nicest compliment yesterday because I was at the doctor's office getting my shoulder shot up, and the girl couldn't believe I was a baby boomer. That was like the nicest thing somebody had said to me. It was great. But we've got to be good leaders in our own homes, in our workplaces, to our family and friends. That's our responsibility. And then finally, the young people in your lives, you've got to model good behavior to them. So really, all this comes back to the individual. The government can do what they do to protect people. You can do what you do to protect your own family. And children can do what they do to be kids. But if you don't have that focused look on what we're doing, and you don't have that ability to bring people along and take responsibility for your own actions, everything is not somebody else's fault. Everything is not somebody else's fault. And these congressmen and women that tried to storm that ICE facility are learning that lesson. Because any congressperson, first of all, they think because they're congressmen and women, they can't be arrested. That's not true. Okay? But secondly, they're members of Congress. They can ask for a tour of any ICE facility they want to go to. But they didn't do that. What they did was they broke the law, they didn't take responsibility for their own actions, and they showed poor leadership. That's 2 of the 3 things I just talked about. Hopefully there were no kids in the crowd that were being corrupted by this. But folks, we've got to take responsibility for our own actions first. And where does that come from? That comes from a faith in God. That comes from an ability to have someone you answer to besides yourself. These big and bad people that go around and say, you're not the boss of me and I can do whatever I want, are the people that end up leading this country astray. So you got to answer to a higher power. You got to have good leaders. You got to lead in your own home and workplace and community. And then you've got to teach your children well.